A neighbor helped uncover my husband's cheating. Life was not working out the way I, Rebecca Crowell, née Raider, wanted it to. While jobs were fine, there were no prospects of finding a really lucrative job in my specialty in the metropolis, where my husband Silas and I lived. In fact, the only thing that made my current job bearable was that my immediate supervisor, Gary Heightens, who was only 2 years older than me, was the most attractive yet sweetest, most considerate guy I'd ever met in my life. Let me be clear, supposedly the wrong orientation. No one knew for sure, but there was a strong suspicion that he was, because he was never seen with a woman. He didn't hit on any women in the company or others we socialized with. His looks were handsome, and given his obvious musculature, he was clearly trying to keep his body in shape. All in all, he was a beautiful sight, much like guys think a magazine model is. I really wanted to move to the Research Triangle area of North Carolina, since that was where all the most interesting things in my field were happening. But Silas insisted on staying put, since his family was here, as was his job, which paid as much as a man of his intelligence could expect to earn. The last remark I made about Silas is a sly one, I know, and I didn't always consider Silas beneath me in intellectual ability. Maybe it's because I had stars in my eyes when I met him, because he's very handsome and, though not intellectual, speaks beautifully. Despite the fact that I rate my intelligence highly, perhaps undeservedly, when I married him at 22, he was 26, I acted like a stupid teenager. Married life was okay for a while because the sex was good and we had a good group of friends, but shortly after our 4th wedding anniversary, I got a bad feeling about Silas. He seemed to be getting more and more into the big-breasted women we encountered, and his approach and comments to me were becoming less and less pleasant. I searched on Bing for signs of a cheating spouse. According to the site to which Bing directed me, Silas had a handful of the 20 most classic signs of cheating. These included 1. No impressions or real appreciation for the gifts I gave him. 2. Guarding his phone more closely, including a new password the one and only time I checked it. 3. Dressing better than usual and using cologne when he rarely used it before. 4. Unexplained charges on one of our credit cards. 5. A snide smile with fake concern right afterward when I told him about an upcoming overnight business trip. I never get more than 2 overnights, mostly just 1. 6. Putting off any talk about the kids. Of course, there were others of the suspicious 20 that he didn't have, but those 6, combined with his increased tendency to have large breasts and less respect in general, made me very wary. In our neighborhood of fairly small, closely spaced houses, there were neighbors directly behind us, no more than 30 yards between our and their back door, with whom we were particularly friendly, though I more so than Silas. Their names were Cora and Hank Williams. At the critical moment of this story, Cora was 36 and Hank was 38. Hank traveled a lot for business. Cora was probably the most intuitive and eccentric person I've ever met. And also smart. I don't think anyone would consider her classically beautiful, but her physical attributes and character would certainly make the average man find her attractive. Her height is about 5 feet 8 inches, and her weight is 155 pounds, which is at least 5 pounds more than she should be, but that doesn't seem to detract from her sexiness. I think she was the one who encouraged Silas's adoration of large breasts. Just between us girls, she let me know that they were on the upper limit of an E-cup, compared to my optimistic B-cup breasts. Because Cora was so unconventional and my best friend, also unobtrusive, I invited her over for lunch one Saturday to talk about my problem. When I told Cora everything I was going to, including my desire to see if Silas was cheating on me and his fascination with big breasts like hers, she started giggling. "What's so funny, sis?" I asked. Crazy Sis was my pet name for her. "There's a role-playing game that Hank and I have played many times in the past that might let you find out if he's a cheater," she giggled. "Say what?" I inquired. "Let me briefly tell you about it," she grinned, and then said, I immediately blushed, but after another 20-minute discussion, we came up with a plan. Her parting words, spoken with a wide grin, were, "Be sure to leave the curtains and blinds in your bedroom open on Tuesday just after dark and text me when Silas runs errands to your bedroom." I was looking forward to Tuesday night. When Silas and I were in the living room, I texted Cora a 5-minute warning and then pretended to sprain my ankle. Silas looked concerned. "Honey," I told him, rubbing my ankle, "please go to our bedroom and get an ankle patch from the nightstand next to the left window. Please, honey." "Sure, Becca," that's what he called me unless he was mad. "And then Rebecca," he replied. As soon as he turned around, I hit the ready message button on my phone. "Now," with a smiling emoji. The longest I had to wait was for Silas to return with a bandage on his ankle. You'd have thought he was looking at something through the window, especially since when he returned, his face was flushed and his pants were frayed. I couldn't resist tugging on his chain. "What took you so long, honey?" Well, I had a hard time finding it," he whimpered. I knew something was hard, but not that he was taking a long time to find an ankle wrap. I wrapped my ankle and patted the seat next to me for him to sit down. The asshole was more horny than he'd ever been in the last couple months. You know, I didn't even care why he was so horny. At that point, I had no evidence that he was a cheater, so I was just enjoying making love to him. I considered the evening a success, and it was our best sex we'd had in over a year. The next day, I couldn't wait to call Cora. I called her cell phone on my way to work. "Tell me what happened, sis," I giggled into the phone. Cora was laughing so hard she almost couldn't tell the whole story. As planned, I was standing at my bedroom window with no clothes on. Then a disguised Hank snuck up on me, handed me a wad of bills, and then started fondling my breasts, starting with the one farthest from the window so Silas could get a good view of the other one. I oohed and ahed for a few minutes, and then Hank picked me up in his arms, threw me on the bed, closed the curtain on the window, and then I screamed, hopefully loud enough for Silas to hear. "Were you able to record Silas's reaction?" I inquired. "Yes. Hank had our video camera with a telephoto lens pointed right at your window. After Hank made love to me, our little cheater charade really turned him on. We watched the tape, and it was priceless." "Can you send me the video?" I asked enthusiastically. "Yes. Hank will transfer it to my phone tonight, and I'll email it to you." We chatted some more until both cars pulled up to our workstations, and then we wrapped up our conversation. A smile shone on my face, which grew even wider when Gary gave me a sincere compliment on my dress. His refined fashion sense also seemed to indicate that he had no interest in women. The video Cora sent me was very funny. Silas's eyeballs almost popped out, and if Hank hadn't closed the curtain, Silas would have exploded. Men are so easy to manipulate. All I had to do to woo Silas that night was to say at dinner, "Cora really wished Hank didn't travel so much. She said she really missed him last night." Silas was as elusive as a freight train as his eyes got as big as baseballs, and he innocently asked, "Oh, was Hank out of town last night?" "Yeah. That's why Cora missed him. She said he'd be out of town tomorrow night, too. I offered to come over to her place for a little while to play cards, but she declined. She'll find something to occupy herself." The look on Silas's face when I said that was priceless. I knew what to expect the next night and advised my little sister on what to do. The next night, Silas cleverly set up a video camera that looked from our bedroom window to Cora's window. This time, Hank was dressed differently. He must have been an entertainer or a makeup artist. But everything repeated as it had the first night, only this time Hank didn't close the curtain, and after he'd obviously laid down on the bed, Cora got up, took off his clothes, and then closed the curtain. I saw Silas try to discreetly check the camera several times during the evening, and one time he came back with a big grin on his face. That evening, Silas again fondled my breasts and had sex at the speed of a fire engine siren. Cora and I were confident that Silas would show himself in all his glory next time, so over the weekend we finalized our original plan. On Tuesday, I told Silas that Hank would be out of town on Wednesday and that I was going to keep Cora company for an hour. Silas said he had a TV program he wanted to watch that I wasn't usually interested in. However, when I got home from work on Wednesday, I told Silas I was sick and called Cora to tell him I couldn't make it. I pretended to be sick and went to bed, offering Silas the guest room for the night in case my illness was contagious. As Cora and I expected, and as she had informed Hank, he wasn't away, Silas showed up at Cora's door about 15 minutes after I went to bed. The next day, I saw and heard it all on the camera that captured it at Cora's house. "Hey, Silas, what's up?" asked Cora, feigning surprise. "There's something I want to talk to you about, Cora," Silas grinned as he walked past Cora, though she didn't actually invite him in. "How's Rebecca doing?" asked Cora, barely glancing at one camera in the vestibule and then another in the adjoining living room. Both had green LEDs on, indicating they were working. "She's asleep in bed, and given that and the fact that Hank's out of town, we've got some work to do," Silas grinned. "What do you mean?" asked Cora, feigning innocence. "Cora, in the last week that Hank's been out of town, I've seen you take money for sex twice, and I have the videotape. I'm sure Hank won't want to find out that his wife is a cheater, and this will be our little secret while I enjoy myself," Silas chuckled, so pleased with himself you'd think his head would burst. "First of all, I've never had sex with anyone but Hank since we got married, and secondly, I can't believe you cheated on your beautiful wife Rebecca. She's such a wonderful woman," Cora replied, feigning indignation. "She may be wonderful, but she doesn't have a huge set of breasts like you. So why don't you let me play with her before we have sex, and Hank and Rebecca won't guess a thing?" Silas grinned. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't just talking. He grabbed Cora's pelvis as she backed away from him to get the perfect angle for the camera in the living room. Suddenly, Silas didn't care about Cora's tattoos. Hank grabbed him from behind by the collar and threw him to the floor. Silas's head bounced like a croquet ball. Cora laughed. Silas lay rubbing his head and muttering, "What a stranger." Hank stood over him. Hank was of average height, but if you crossed him, he became an angry asshole. He had wrestled 4 years in college at 174 pounds and was still in good shape. "You stupid asshole," Hank growled. "You saw the game Cora and I play pretending she's a hot cheater. I wasn't in town on either of the 2 nights you were watching her when you saw her outstanding ta-ta-tas. Now get out of here," Hank continued, lifting Silas by the collar and pushing him out the door. As soon as the door closed, Cora threw her arms around Hank and kissed him soundly. "Someone's really getting lucky today," she giggled, breaking the kiss. "But I have to call Rebecca first." Hank played with Cora's breasts while she called my cell phone. I answered on the first ring. "We have everything on video?" Cora purred as soon as I said, "Hello?" "What an asshole," I bellowed. "Tell me the details." "I can't right now. Hank's acting like a caveman, and I wouldn't be surprised if he threw me over his shoulder and carried me to bed." "We can talk tomorrow," Cora continued. Her last words before she pressed the red button, clearly not for me, were her pitiful, "You're such an animal." I was waiting by the door, arms crossed, when Silas returned. "Where have you been?" I growled. Becca. I hope you, feeling better," he replied, stuttering. "Answer the question." I just went for a walk." "So you didn't just go to Cora's house to pay or blackmail her into sex?" I snapped back once more. What gave you that idea?" "That's bullshit." Silas gulped. "I guess I'll find out when I talk to Cora tomorrow," I snapped, turned, went upstairs, closed and locked the master bedroom door, and put a deadbolt under the doorknob to eliminate the possibility of intrusion. Though I expected Silas to do so, I was angry enough to make an appointment as soon as possible with the lawyer I'd already figured out. Before leaving for work the next morning, I stopped by Cora's house and she played me the video, just as I described it above. I was pretty pissed. Silas was not only going to cheat, he was going to blackmail my best friend. My time with him was up. I called the lawyer's office I'd spotted on my way to work, and the receptionist set up an appointment for 11 the next morning. Cora transferred a copy of the videotape to my phone. Despite his attempts to strike up a conversation the next night when I got home from a late dinner, I ignored Silas. I locked and bolted the master bedroom door again. On Thursday, I left before Silas got up and met with the lawyer. She asked if I was sure I wanted to leave, and I confirmed that I was. I told her I planned to find a job in North Carolina as soon as possible and then move, and she took that into consideration when preparing the divorce papers. I asked her not to file them until I had gotten my act together. After lunch, I walked into Gary's office and closed the door. "Gary, I'll be leaving as soon as I find a job in North Carolina, and I wanted to give you a heads up since you've always been good to me." "Oh, you and Silas are moving?" he inquired. "No, just me. I'll tell you in confidence that I'll be filing for divorce soon. In fact, as soon as I find a job in North Carolina, and I hope you'll give me a good recommendation." A sly, temporary smile appeared on Gary's face that I didn't recognize. "You've been the best employee in the entire company, as far as I'm concerned, and I'll be happy to give you a good recommendation. In fact, maybe you could do me a favor when you're looking and let me know the names of the companies you contact that are in the same field as us, but much more sophisticated." It was a very strange request, but I replied, "Sure." The next 3 weeks were challenging for me. I was trying to do two things at the same time: work, find a new job, and communicate with Silas. Of course, eventually I had to talk to Silas. But to distract him, I didn't bother telling him that there was a videotape of what he had done. I told him that I probably believed his story that he never tried to blackmail Cora or pay her for sex, but dismissed the sex, saying that I was still looking into the matter. Fortunately, thanks in no small part to Gary's glowing recommendation, by the 22nd day of my job search, I had landed a new position in the Research Triangle area of North Carolina. It was just right for me and even paid 15% more than I was making. During my search, I had lunch with Gary 3 or 4 times. They were the longest one-on-one meetings I'd ever had with him, and they were only 1/4 business. The rest of the time, our interactions were just pleasant, including discussing my job search. I hoped I wouldn't ruin my relationship with him. After all, I really liked him. But one day I asked him, "I hope you won't take offense to me, but what is your sexual orientation?" He smiled broadly and after some delay said, "Perhaps you'll find out someday," and then changed the subject. I had 2 weeks vacation and all my affairs were in perfect order, so when I applied I was able to leave. As luck would have it, Silas happened to be out of town on the day that all the things I wanted were loaded into the mover's truck. I called Silas the next day, when I was already more than halfway to the apartment I had rented in North Carolina. Silas was frantic when he called me, and I answered, after being served with the summons. I let him vent for a while and then said, "I'm sending you the video. After you watch it, see if you can say I'm divorcing you for nothing." I never heard from him again, except through lawyers. I was sorry to part with Cora, Hank, Gary, and half a dozen of my friends, but I planned to keep in touch, and once I had a house, invite Cora and Hank over. Silas decided not to fight the divorce, in no small part because, according to Cora, 2 weeks after I left, he put an airhead with DD breasts in the house. I found out he was having an affair with her almost from the moment I did a Bing search. I got all the material benefits I wanted from the divorce, so I didn't care. My new job was great. It was challenging but enjoyable. I liked all my co-workers and my boss, a woman in her 50s, kind and tough at the same time, and there was a real chance for advancement. And one weekend, things got even better. On Friday, I received an email from my attorney with a divorce decree. I was just happy, no nostalgia. I was getting ready to celebrate with a few female colleagues when my cell phone rang. The caller ID said, Gary Heightens. I answered the call, walking outside my office building so no one would overhear our conversation. Hi, Gary. Good to hear from you, I answered with a genuine smile on my face. I hope you're doing well, Rebecca, he said with what I realized was a contrived tone in his voice. Of course I am. In fact, I have great news. I just got my divorce decree today, I grinned. Suddenly, I stopped hearing the phone. It seemed to cut off the conversation. However, I could still hear his voice. Actually, according to the court documents, the judgment was issued yesterday, which is why I'm here. Turning around, I saw that he was standing no more than 10 feet away from me. Gary, I muttered. He walked over to me and gave me the sweetest kiss of my life. His body was so nice to the touch. He had embossed muscles. He smelled good and not cologne. His hands felt great on my body. When we finally broke our kiss, he grinned and said, Does that answer your question about my sexual orientation? I don't know where my next comment came from, but I hummed. It's a start, but I need more proof. Take some time off, he grinned, and I'll provide it. As he led me to his car, I called my boss and told her I had an emergency. I guess she heard him kissing and growling in the background because she laughed and said, Be here early Monday morning, no excuses, and then cut the call. Fortunately, I lived only a mile from work and often walked or biked. I walked that day. Gary turned out to be the most normal guy I'd ever met. He didn't even let me shower before having sex with me. They say the brain is the most important organ. That may be true because I wanted to make love to Gary more than anything. But I'm not sure because what he did to my body for the next 3 hours didn't require any involvement of the mind. Our 3-hour session, which involved every room and virtually every piece of furniture and floor in my apartment, reached its end in my bedroom. I think I blacked out for a long time before I opened my eyes and saw him smiling at me, his face only a few inches from mine. You're even better than I thought, and that's saying a lot, because for the entire 3+ years we've known each other, I've carried a torch for you. Really? I asked, surprised. Yes, I carry it. To prove it to you, I got a job at a firm just 10 minutes from here, and after I wrap things up at our old place, I'll be moving. He grinned. Do you have a place to stay? I asked. Not yet. Any suggestions? Based on the last 3 hours, I suggest we try being roommates for a while, and if it works out, you can live here. Is that what your second bedroom is for? Grinned Gary. No, it's my office and a place to store some of your stuff that you don't want to put in storage, I grinned. This bed is big enough for 2. By the end of the weekend, I couldn't walk or think straight. The only consolation was that I'd worn his body out, so he was in as bad shape as I was. When he came to live with me 2 weeks later, I expected to go through an adjustment period and vowed to keep an open mind while being critical. That was 3 years ago. It turned out that no adjustment was required because he turned out to be who I thought he was for the 3+ years I knew him before he started making love to me. And after the first time he made love to me, I liked him even 10 times more than before. We now live in a house, have been married for over 2 years, and I am on maternity leave 8 months pregnant. Although in my current state we can't have wild love-making sessions like the first weekend we were together, he still makes love to me every day. I tell him that once the bambino arrives, she will be the first to claim my D-cup breasts that have enlarged over the pregnancy. We'll see about that, he laughs. Every day I thank my good friend and crazy sister Cora for pretending to be a friendly cheater, and she will definitely be my baby's godmother. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.